Have you ever heard of the Ship of Theseus? It's also called Grandfather's Axe. It's basically a mythology where an object that is being preserved has its components replaced to the point where you start to wonder exactly how much of it is still original versus how much of it is brand new. It started off as Greek mythology, where Theseus's ship returned to Athens and was preserved by the people. And as the boards of the ship rotted away, new ones took their place, to the point where there was only one board left in the entire ship that was still original. And the reason why I mention this is because on my channel there's been a lot of questions as to if we preserve certain ocean liners. There's liners like the Queen Mary, there's liners like the SS Keewatin, and various others that have been saved over the years, including the QE2, which is in Dubai. And so a lot of people have said, well, wait, if these ships are going to be here for a long time and we're just fixing them up and fixing them up over the years, how much of it is still original? And of course, my channel also covers, railroads. And so people wonder, well, what about these old trains? How much of that is original? And so I wanted to talk about preservation. Not just necessarily about ocean liners, but preservation in general. Now, the reason why people bring up this Ship of Theseus thing, which is a concern because people say, well, how long will it last before it's not original anymore? The reason why people ask this is because in the past, preservation methods were considered preservation by replacement. There is a truth to it. In the past, we used to preserve things by replacing their components. But the funny thing is that in the modern age, we don't do that as much anymore. I mean, there are still examples of it happening. Sometimes things have to be taken off and thrown away. But there are plenty of YouTube channels that show you how they preserve things, and quite frankly, they don't always just replace stuff. A lot of preservation methods are to actually try to safeguard and restore the material that is already there. A lot of preservation methods require that the components of the original object are safeguarded and preserved as they are. So for instance, let's say if the Queen Mary was being properly preserved, in the right world, the way that they would do it is, let's say there was a wooden wall paneling that was beautiful. Let's say it was some kind of marquetry wood paneling, right? And let's say over the years, as the ship serving as a hotel, people have puked on it, they've dropped their drinks on it, that kind of thing, and it gets heavily stained. Well, instead of just cutting out that wood panel when it got really nasty and throwing it out, the way that you'd preserve it is you'd have a professional come in, you'd sand it smooth to get all of that stuff off, because there is a layer of varnish that is protecting the wood. Sand off all that varnish, and if there are still persistent stains, then a proper expert would try to mitigate the look of those stains before adding a new protective layer of museum-grade varnish. Another way we do preservation is to actually protect something with a new layer of something else, just like the painting method, except you'll find that if you go into the veranda restaurant of the Queen Mary, there are original paintings on the walls, and those paintings are currently being protected by a layer of acrylic that is covering them. So that's one way we do that. Instead of actually just going there and touching up the paint on those paintings constantly when they get dirty, you just protect it. But nevertheless, what I'm trying to say here is that you don't necessarily need to take items off of an original piece to fix them. You can just find ways to preserve their dignity and to preserve their strength. With steam locomotives, this can be a little bit more tricky because steam locomotives have a lot of parts that move, and there are a lot of parts that get affected by the water. The boilers of a steam locomotive, they collect scale and grime over the years, and after boiling and boiling and boiling water over the years and constantly heating up and relaxing over days or weeks, that can fatigue the metal. That being said, with proper care, there are some steam locomotives that have boilers that are 100 years old that are still going and pressurized to this day because they're just so well kept. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to remove components. But a good example of a perfect Ship of Theseus is the Mark Twain riverboat at Disneyland, believe it or not. Now, the Mark Twain riverboat at Disneyland, a lot of people who get on it, they think it's some fake boat that is on, a motorized track or something. It's a real steamboat. It was built in 1955 for the park. And at the time, it was the first steamboat built in over half a century. So the interesting thing about the Mark Twain riverboat is that when it was first built, quite a lot of it was made of wood. It still is today, mostly made of wood. And over the years, that wood gets degraded and rotten from being outside all the time. There's no place to store the boat from the weather. They can only store it outside. So over the years, they have had to replace all the wood on the ship several times. And there are only a few things left where it's still original, such as the hull of the boat is still original. It's been patched over time, but it's still original. The various metal pieces that hold together the paddle wheel are still original. And the various hardware on the ship is still original, aside from the boiler, which has been replaced at least once. But it's funny because the Mark Twain riverboat, all the components at some point, well, mostly I should say, have been replaced over the years, to the point where there's only little bits and pieces here and there that you can point out and say, that's still original, or that's still original. And that's kind of the funny part, is that that really is a good example of the Ship of Theseus. So circling around to ocean liners and the Queen Mary, I recently put out a video that talked about how long ocean liners can really last. Is there really a 40-year time limit? In which, in that video, I tell people that it doesn't have to be that way. With proper preservation, you can make something last essentially for forever, so to speak. Not for all eternity, but for a very long time. And there were still some people that go, yes, but how much of the ship is still original, after so many years? Well, what I can tell you is since the ship has retired, it's been 55 years so far since the ship retired, and while they have removed a lot of the original ship, and the stuff that they did remove, they never actually replaced. So it's not like they removed whole decks and replaced them with new whole decks. Essentially, they removed parts of the ship and even parts of D deck, and they never put anything back in its place. There's still quite a lot of the original ship there. The Queen Mary isn't yet an example of the Ship of Theseus, not for a long time, and if proper preservation methods are done from now on, we can still preserve and save what is left of the ship that is original. So anyway, that's my little bit for today. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting my channel by either signing up for my Patreon or to my YouTube memberships. That way you can get exclusive perks in return. Links are in the description below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.